how we're gonna start this, we're gonna start with introductions. All right, I'm FinalHarps. This is Greatest Gamer right here, and then we got Nanners.
Hello.
This way on the screen.
Whichever direction my box is in, that's where
Exactly.
we're at. I don't want to point in the wrong direction.
So
You'd be to our right. So.
I think that's right. Yep, there's that one. And then wait, I did say Toostupidgamerz, didn't I?
Yeah.
It's Nanners.
Yeah,
Oh, Mashthestampede now. He has upgraded his name. He probably wants to smack me now because I don't remember that, but it's okay.
He corrected himself fast enough, so it's
Yes,
all
I
good.
did.
It's a new name. It's a new name.
Oh, Mashthestampede. Oh.
There's an M. That's why my profile is an M now.
I'm a dumbass.
See, he says that. I mean, it goes with it. Look at this fucking goofball.
I am a goofball. That's why I have so much fun. Let me redo that.
You know what's crazy? That looks like I'm in a whole separate room, but you edited it so good that it looks like I'm next to you. That's what that looks like.
Are you serious?
That's what that looks like to me. Doesn't it? That's what that looks like to me. Don't tell me it doesn't.
Let me
See, look at that. Like, it's a cutoff, and you just like...
It
does
does.
kind of
The only thing, if the tape wasn't there, if we move this tape.
Now I'll put my hand in the way. You're like, oh no, this is how chill, bro.
Okay.
Hell, I'm half Indian. Well, technically I'm Aztec, so I'm actually not that farly related from an Indian.
Okay, there we go.
Oh,
That's
yo, that's godlike. That's godlike.
Okay, cool. Oh, now we're digressing. But let me fix that one post on Moot. Then we're good. But we could start talking anyway. Who wants to go first tonight? Because I am honestly underprepared, so I'm going to feed off of you guys.
Yeah, I'll say, do you want me to go first? Because I'm the youngest.
All right, how about this? Think of a number between 1 and 10.
500.
Okay, Nanners goes first because he's being an asshole.
Oh, good. Yeah, well, I think it'd be a good idea to... This podcast is going to be a little bit different because of the topic we have. Last week, as like a... Just to wrap up what we talked about then, we were talking about depression for content creators, and I think the podcast went to about 2 hours, something like that. So this time we're going to be talking about something that's a little bit more positive, and it's really the history of video games and the development of video games and the industry as a whole. So some deep stuff. We create a little bit of a roadmap, more or less. I think we could use it just to kind of keep the podcast in a good flow, kind of keep organized, and so we don't tangent too much. Maybe we could just get through some of that. But yeah, the three of us are here to talk about the history of video games, from the conception of video games all the way to all the different aspects of the video game industry in 2020. So I don't know where you guys want to start specifically, but I guess the beginning would be a good place.
Okay though, how old are you, Nanners?
I'm almost 30.
Okay, I'm the oldest here.
Yeah.
I'm 34, so I'll start because I'm the oldest.
Yep.
Now, when I was younger, the first video game I played was either the first Zelda, second Zelda, or even Super Mario. Now, back then, that's when the regular Nintendo was out. But if we go back to where my father was, man, those games were so old and crazy and hard. And I mean, they were hard because they're literally you get hit once, you die. There's no saves, nothing like that. You couldn't you actually had to beat the game and go and if you die all the way through, you have to start all over because there was no saving. Now you can save a game. What the fuck else was there back then? My God, it was insane. Then later on, once when I was a kid, Nintendo was out, and that's when saves started getting in place. The first Zelda has save points. The first Mario didn't have save points. Had some warp points, but no save points, or you were screwed. So when it comes to me nowadays, I love saves. I love it. But then it takes away the difficulty of games. It's shit. This is too easy now. I could just save and scrub. Do a scrub save. But yeah.
It does.
Why
don't we go around to talk about everyone's first video game and video game console?
Regular Nintendo, and I honestly can't remember. I can remember the first set of games, but I can't remember the exact first game. It was Nintendo. It was Mario, Zelda, Zelda 2, like around that era. Around that era. Now we're going clockwise, so this mofo.
Me?
Okay. Think of a number.
5.
It's all right. No, you guys can both go. I think it'll be easier if I go last because I'm phoning into you guys.
Okay, go ahead. What's up, Sausage? How you doing tonight?
So I'm actually like around 24 years old, so I'm a lot younger. And the first system I can ever remember playing, I think, has to be the Super Nintendo, or the first one, I'm not exactly sure. And I was like around 6 or 4, and the first game was Mario, because that just comes by default, you know, your duck hunts and everything. And then like a little tank game. But I didn't really start playing a lot more until like, because I played a lot, like normal kids, you know. We went outside more than we stayed inside. And it was like the N64. And we only had like 2 controllers, because another thing is like, I'm young, but my parents didn't go out of their way to buy me consoles all the time, nor did we have the luxury. So it's just, you had your one console, that's it. One control if you were lucky. And 3 games max. But one of the ones I definitely remember was playing Turok. For Turok 2. Yeah, at the age of 8, that was trash. That was terrible. And yeah, no, we didn't have a cartridge, so yeah, no, there's saving? What's that? And even when we had a PS1 later on, we only had Resident Evil 3. See, thanks in chat. But yeah, that game I was terrified. And what it worked too, as our neighbor, he had an N64 too. It was a bit older than me, and when we played multiplayer, he just bring his own system. I don't know if they did system link. That's another thing that I will say for sure is, up until I'm a teenager, I have literally no idea how any of this stuff works. So you're gonna have a very weird perspective on how I looked at stuff as a kid. Like, I thought the internet was off a dish, which it is, but not the entirety of the internet. You know, I didn't even know but that's, again, that'll come up later. But yeah, and then so and then we had a PS2. That one my dad got at a Home Depot, because that's where he used to work, and he got it off a raffle, and he gave it to us for our birthday, and then that's when we actually spent the most time in. And it made sense when we already had PS1 control. The fact that it was backwards compatible really synced it into my childhood, because that is one of the single most important things for everyone I know.
I have to cut you off for one moment. Sorry. How the hell is the PS1 backwards compatible?
No, the PS2. The PS2.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
PS2.
I'm gonna say, like, there's no backwards compatibility from a first system generation.
Yeah, no, because as you know, it was N64. No, Nintendo, Super Nintendo, N64, PS1, and then PS2. But we never stuck too long on those. The PS2 was the longest.
What was your first game?
My first game, it was Mario, definitely. But the first one I'd say for me that I definitely played, like, you know, not just something like, you know, whatever, was Turok. It just, that game was amazing.
That was.
You know, like, there's your first technical game, and then your first game. First game was Mario. Yeah. My first technical game was like Turok. 2. Yeah, I have to express that it's 2. Seeds of Evil, not the first.
That sounds a lot like mine, which is that, like, same thing. I played a lot of Game Boy and like games at friends' houses and some PC gaming too, but I didn't really consider the start of me playing video games, like, you know, as like a gamer, until I got my first console, which was the N64, and it was with a copy of, it was the Jungle Green bundle with a copy of Donkey Kong 64. So that's what I consider my first console, first game. Funny thing is, though, I never actually beat that until last year, when I decided to randomly just stream Donkey Kong 64 for the purposes of finally finishing that game out. It was awesome. It was like a great experience to come back to that. The boss was crazy. But yeah. So that's all of our first consoles. I think greatest actually brought up a really interesting point, was that you may find that we all have some different perspective on video games, especially when we're younger. And I think some of that comes into what I just said, which is that, like, from the moment that you start picking up a video game, or you pick up a video game and start playing a game, you don't really consider yourself like, oh, I'm a gamer already, or like, oh, this is going to be like a really important hobby to me, like, you know, over the many years. Exactly. You just kind of, you're just kind of playing a game. You don't see like the future of it. So that definitely changes your perspective of what games were like to you when you were 8 versus what games are like to you when you're 18, when you're 28, etc.
Awkward silence.
Oh, no. Actually, so going what you were saying, that's exactly right, because like I said, I didn't really, and even though that was like Turok was my first game, never did I see it as disappointment. Oh, this is one of my, like, a big hobby. Like, no, it's something I did as part of my childhood. And even then, you didn't care that you were only limited to a GameCube or N64. Like, you know, like console fanboyism just wasn't a thing in your head. You didn't care. You went to your friends, oh, Game Boy, you know? Like my cousin, he's just like that. He was the main person I went to for Nintendo stuff. You know, he would always have, because he actually had the money, his parents would get it, And since he was such a cool dude, we always borrowed his Nintendo DS, his GameCube, you know, so we always looked forward to going to his house, was one of those things. And then we just go in his backyard and play a bunch of toys. It literally, system was nothing more than just another toy to play, you know?
Yeah. Exactly. It was like, it's a totally different experience, because like you could play a toy with a toy, and you look at it, you're like, oh, this is cool, but but playing on a game system, like you're controlling it, and it's going where you want it to go, and you have to follow the rules of what's placed in the game, and then get to the end and beat it. Like, I remember playing a game called Blaster Master for the regular Nintendo. My God, that bitch was hard. Like, once you got past... always water levels. I hate water levels. They always destroy me in every game.
They're still terrible.
Anyway, there was this crab he had to fight, and... man, okay, there was a glitch in Blaster Master where you could throw a grenade to pause the game. Ocarina of Time. Yes. Yeah, ooh, that is really good. All right. Anyway, you throw a grenade, pause the game, then it just, the damage keeps happening. Okay? And then they eventually die. But it only worked on every other level. Ironically, the one level where you only needed it on, where you die so many damn times because it was so hard, was the water levels. This crab that kept doing this, and then when you get to a certain point where it's about to die, it changes phases, but all it does is shoot more things, and you're dodging. It's just like... But the reason why I love saves is because you could save now and just go right back and keep trying. But in that game, you couldn't. You die, you could use your last continue, that's it. You done. You had to start all the way back from the beginning, and that was like stage 4 or 5. And the rest of the stages were kind of hard, but you literally had to memorize where to go, where you haven't been. There's no map, and like with that game, you had to literally memorize everything to be able to beat it. Like, come on, you got Castlevanias back on the Nintendo that if you don't do a special thing that is, and actually know exactly where to do it, you're not going to beat it. Was it Simon's Quest was one of the hardest ones where you had to just guess, like, oh, do this. I don't know how my dad figured it out, but he did. I'm like, how did you figure this out? You don't even play games, and he didn't. He just figured it out. And that's the
well, Castlevania 2 was notorious because it was so weird and very cryptic. The other Castlevania games aren't quite like that, because a lot of them are just side scrollers. However, 3 had some of this kind of like, they introduced branching paths to the levels. Different characters. You could actually choose a different character as opposed to just you're stuck with the same guy. But yeah, Simon's Quest, they're like a million. I'm a big fan of the Angry Video Game Nerd, and his thing was always frustrating old games. And yeah, I mean, there's like hundreds of these games where it's like, how would you ever figure this out? How would you figure this out in a time before the internet being common? In a time before, like, you know, you really had like a way to just talk to other people playing this game. It was just you as a kid in a room by yourself, or maybe with a friend, and this video game, and there was no one else that you could really talk to because your parents didn't play video games. So it's not like they would be able to help you, like find out where you have to crouch before the vortex appears or whatever.
Yeah, it's like Chrysalis. I don't know if you ever played that. It was like it was my first RPG. What was it? Real-time battle RPG. And it was, you walk around, you have a sword, you could charge it, you have to find items, you have to talk to certain people. But how the hell are you supposed to know that you have to level up in this once, then go to the next zone to be able to trigger the event to happen, to be able to get the item to go to where you need to go? That game was pretty massive for being a regular Nintendo game, and the fact that you had to memorize everything. And Swash just brings up the original Zelda. Yes, that game was freaking hard. Like, all these games, like okay. Now, when we play older games, a lot of kids can't handle it because it's so hard. It's such a different field. It's a different way it feels. There's always a delay when you play them. So it's like, you can't, what's up, Showboys? You can't just sit there and go play this game, regular Nintendo game. They're like, what? I had my son playing Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, and he couldn't get past the guy with the chain in the first castle when you're saving the princess. He couldn't do it. I grabbed the controller, I beat her right away. He's like, how? I know, but that was a few years ago. I know now he'll be able to do it, but he couldn't do it. And when I was his age, I was beating it before his age.
Yeah, I think another interesting thing about video games, especially how they've changed, is that back then, I mean, you got, like Greatest was saying earlier, if you were lucky, you got 3 games. So those were the games that you had. Those were the games that you played. The reason you knew how to beat Link to the Past is because you've done it before. And kids developed these skills and figured out all of these really difficult, very cryptic, old school retro games because they played it so many times. And finally it's like, oh, I just figured out this one little piece to this giant puzzle. Whereas today, I mean, you know, you have so many games that it's almost bad to make a kid's game too difficult at this point, because if they put it down, they'll just go play Fortnite, they'll go play Minecraft, they'll go play something else. I think it's shifted more towards make your game more open world and make it full of more things that you could just randomly do and like be entertained by, as opposed to, I mean, this is like homework at this. It's almost like video games used to be homework.
You had to take notes. Certain games you had to take notes, like Contra. Okay, you just gotta dodge right. Freaking, like, there's some games that were just, what else was ridiculously hard?
I mean, Contra, you hit it on the nail with Contra. Contra's insanely hard.
It's insanely hard, but at the same point, you're just side-scrolling or going straight. You're not doing anything special. Like, that was the thing about, like, older games. And the difficulty was, like, a fucking 20 compared to 10 nowadays. But on a different type of feel. It was not like how you could play Super Mario 64, be able to save and keep doing something over and over and over at the same exact spot. But yeah, that game was hard in some spots, especially for trying to collect all the stars, but it still was hard. And not with cheats, motherfucker. No, we're not cheating. We're talking about like actual, like playing it.
Like we even knew what cheats were.
Right? Or up, down, left, right,
right.
A, B, C, or ABC, A, B, A, B, C, start. That was one of them for Sega.
Unless your uncle came up with some game info, like, oh, you'll like this, and you're like, oh, it has Contra. Then that's like 1 in 1,000 chance.
Yeah, it was. You had to find or like call for those cheats, and they cost, oh my god. You guys did you ever make that phone call and then your parents come up to you like, why is my phone bill so high? Because you're getting all the cheat codes for all the games you play, writing them all down.
See, I was too young for that shit.
Yeah, you were.
See, so this is a different thing. But when you get
Man, I was at a friend's house and I did that. I didn't realize you had to pay for it.
See,
or buying magazines. You just have to, if you guys want to beat the games, you got to get the power, the Nintendo power.
The Nintendo power, yeah. Oh my god, like that back in the day. Oh man. So okay, so let's get on to. We understand the difficulty, the fact of like how harder games were back then. Like they were insanely hard.
When you're done, I'll end it off with the statistics told you about.
Oh, you got some statistics? Yeah. When do you want to start that? After we go
after like basically we're right before we're transitioning. Like I'll give a little bit of what you guys were saying, and then I'll give the stats.
So pretty much now, the Rogue Squadron. Okay, do you remember Rogue Squadron used cheat codes, so you basically got DLC like content after episode 1 released? Honestly, no, I never played Rogue Squadron. But damn, I lost my train of thought. Choo choo. Okay. Essentially, we talked about how the games were back then. They were ridiculously hard. No save points. You had to guess what to do. Literally had to guess. There was no guide, no booklet, nothing. So now, I'm gonna put an example of like games now. But before we do that, he has some statistics about older games. Yeah, so
I'll feel like 3 things that I was saying. I agree.
Sit up. So
I mean, it goes into it, but as you guys were saying, like there was no state, and I mentioned earlier, it would depend what you have. If you have money or luxury to even check these things. But even why it's different for us when these kids is how now you can just go play Fortnite. They have it's convenience. When we were there, We either went outside, oh, it's raining, you have nothing better to do. And I would never finish these games. Like you said, he just recently, streamed in. Oh, to this day, I still haven't finished Turok 2. It was just something you did. And when you did play, you would keep losing and losing, but you didn't care. That's how we were so entertained by the fact that stuff was happening. And we spent hours on the same level until we beat it. And you just kept redoing it. And that's just perfection. You were getting better and better at the core game. Yep. And even if you never beat the game, you go back to it, you're like, damn, I'm a beast, And the thing is, this perception, actually, this is the statistic. Yep. It is proven, even if you keep doing like this, repetition is what makes you better, and going through it. And anger stops you, but it improves you. That's why you feel that satisfaction, like you were saying earlier. But as we were kids, this was already impressive. Just seeing this stuff, and it was something you would do. Oh, today, you play Contra for an hour. Tomorrow, maybe you don't play it. And then one day, me and my cousin, 2 days, we just marathoned it, and we actually beat it. But this is something we built over a year. Slowly playing. And that's the thing. These kids don't have that attention span. And it's something that, like, oh, why would I do this when I could just play my iPhone? We didn't have that option. We only had this system and go outside. That's it.
Oh, shit, my iPhone could tell me exactly everything that's going on.
Right. So that's a good part of it. It's our circumstance. And the other statistic is a lot of people didn't really own, like, save states. And even parents didn't know about it. But the most important thing why these games are hard, I don't think they're as hard. Because if we were able to do it as kids, anybody can do it as a kid, It just takes time and effort. And because they were cryptic. And why they were cryptic is the NES style, why it's so unforgiving and everything is this is the first time we really had ports of, like, say, arcade games and stuff. And they still had the arcade mentality. They were trying to take your quarters. Mm-hmm. And all it was trial and error. That's literally all it is.
Arcade.
Trial and error.
We're only fighting games we're at was the arcade. Oh, my God.
Not to say that these games aren't easy. No, they're definitely not. They do require your time and attention.
Yeah.
And even, like, say, the Zelda, there are very obvious patterns. Like, when I played one recently, I was like, oh, I can see it. But this is something that, developed in your childhood. And now you have many ways to tackle a problem.
You don't know how many times I have told my son, hey, you missed that. He's like, what? How did you miss that? Don't you see that? He's like, what? I say, turn around. Like, don't you see that? What? Then he looks a little closer. He's like, how did you see that? I just saw it. It was right there. It's out of place. Like, you could see the difference in just how it looks. He's like, he just didn't see it.
But yeah.
But okay.
Yeah, I actually have two things I'd like to respond.
Oh, sure.
Unless you're not finished.
No,
yet.
I was actually just going to transition to something else, but I'm just going to let you do that.
So basically, this whole conversation just made me realize that how there's kind of like a trend of roguelike games. Mm-hmm. If you guys don't know what roguelike is, it basically means that roguelike permadeath means that when you have one chance to do the thing. If you lose, you're just dead. That's it. And then you have to go all the way back to the beginning. And then roguelike is that or procedural generation means that then the whole level that it's all gone. You're never playing that level again. You're playing a randomized version of what the game looks like. So in theory, you have like a million different possible levels. And it's almost as if that kind of gameplay would be an answer to having like kids put the game down because, they didn't beat it. So they're not going to be able to figure out. They're just going to want to go to something else. But this is almost like it's a new game because it's not the same thing. This is like a new challenge. So try again. And the other point I wanted to know was on the flip side of games used to be really difficult. Have you guys had that experience of going back to a game? Maybe you remember it being really hard, and then you actually end up beating it, and it's pretty easy.
Yep, I really that's one.
Or
that's what happened to me with Donkey Kong.
Yeah, like or you struggle at that spot where you struggled before, but then it's not as hard of a struggle. You're able to get past it faster, and you're like, "Why was this so hard before?" Mm-hmm. But that's with experience with other games you played. You got a little bit more mature. You aged a little bit, and you're able to take a little bit more in than you were before. I mean, there's a lot of times where, like now, like all right. Let's transition from talk about old games because we got the old games down. Like we definitely talked about that. So
let's move towards
like the next generation. Now we started getting PlayStation or Super Nintendo. And Super Nintendo was like, oh, these are cool. You had like Super Mario, which I can't really remember too much on. Oh, never mind. Super Nintendo had so many great games. And that's when we go back to Super Mario World, right? Man, that game was so much fun back then, and it still is fun. And it was like hard, but you got to save. So it's like it was hard, but you got to go back and freaking like go back and redo things. Now with Zelda, it was the same thing. You had to guess where to go. Like there was no like whatever. Oh, you gotta have this hammer to do this. Like what? You need this to do that, and you had to remember everything. At least you had a map. What was the last game then? That's where JRPGs came in, like Secret of Mana, Final Fantasy, and so and then you start realizing, oh, games have a better standard. There's actually story, there's quality, there's text, and this is when you go from Galaga, a little spaceship just shooting straight up, to holy crap, games are developing into like full-blown story / movies / you get encouraged in the whole effect of the game. It's like really awesome. Thank you for that follow, Sausage. And it's just, you start realizing that games are growing and maturing into something special. And let's touch upon like that era. What was Super Nintendo era? Like what else was out during then?
What are you talking about? Like, Super Nintendo was
around that time?
Or...
No, just Super Nintendo at that time, because that was like with the next generation. With Super Nintendo, that was N64.
Oh, okay, we were talking about the old ones, but
Super Nintendo and Genesis.
It was Genesis. Oh my God, Sonic!
Yeah. Well, I wanted to bring up real quick. You said that I like the transition from NES to Super Nintendo, specifically for if you compare the first Castlevania. Let's compare just the OG Castlevania game with Super Castlevania, aka Castlevania 4, and the amount of like improvement in those games in that game is ridiculous in movement, in gameplay, in the music. What's also really cool is that they were able to take advantage of that bump up in technology, and you can really create, or that game really creates atmosphere like you couldn't do in Castlevania 1. The intro cinematic, yeah, I mean, by today's standards, obviously it's not like scary or like foreboding or anything like that, but it created like a cool feeling of starting a Castlevania game.
No.
That,
hold on one second.
Probably was the intention of the original Castlevania games.
Hold on one second. But when we saw that as kids, we were like, holy shit, this is badass. Because we never saw that before. Carry on.
And that was cutting edge. That was the
exactly.
top of the line at that point,
Exactly. You got anything
and
else?
yeah, mind you, video games have gone from being from the like almost the very beginning, from Pong, blocks on a black screen, all the way to like Castlevania, a franchise that has quickly become insanely popular. It's now being continued on the next generation of consoles, and it's like 10 times better than the first one was.
Yes.
And the first one is a classic, but it's 10 times better than that.
Yes. Yeah, so on Sega Genesis, I didn't really play too many games on there, but Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles was one of my favorites of all time. Mortal Kombat was on there.
Mm-hmm.
Man, the blood and gore. This is before ratings for games, and this is before everyone became wimps in the world. Now everyone's wimps, or they need a rating and then can't handle it because their parents don't know how to raise kids. But that's my personal opinion. What about you? Did you play
here? And this is, I think it's going to be different because this is soon it shows you. So basically, the Sega Genesis came out in 1988. Who knows? Maybe you got it 2 years later. This shows you this perspective. I literally went from an NES to a PS1. That's actually like 2 generations. And mind you, the NES was already out 30 years ago when I played the NES.
Yes.
The Sega Genesis?
That's the same thing that happened. I just want to start to interject. It's the same thing that happened to me. My N64, like our parents weren't made of money, so they got it when they could get it. Eventually, it dropped in price. Eventually, a bunch of games were out for it too, so it made more sense to get it. So some of us probably ended up getting the console for the first time when it had already been out for like a really long time.
Right, and then continue. Thank you for that. That proves right into what I'm saying. And again, my parents just got whatever. It was on sale at a local thrift store or whatever. I didn't play the Sega Genesis until 2008. And let me tell you, I still enjoyed that. Bro, Sonic. Yes. Dude, I think one of the best wrestling games exists on there, hands down. WWF. I forgot what the name of it was, but we played that for hours. In 2008, mind you, PS2 and PS3 practically already existed.
Yeah.
And I still had a blast. And you're exactly right. Because developers, this is the fact, they had many interviews that they were talking about, they were trying to take the mentality of the arcade, but trying to adapt to it. But they're like, no, we need to modify that. That's why you guys experienced that gap. Yep. When they oh, it's amazing and everything. Because now they got rid of the things that kind of held back and were being a bit more clear, but not... You see what they were trying to do.
Yep.
You know, and that's all I can really add to, because I didn't play too much. See, that's why my mind ran right away to PS1. I'm pretty sure some of you might have noticed, because like for me, that's where the gap goes. That gap almost doesn't exist because I didn't play the Sega until 2008.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you guys are completely right.
Memories of the
completely
Genesis.
right, because in the documentary, this exactly shows the progression and why the mentality changed for developers, and they were using, wait, we don't have to do it like this. We're not trying to take their quarters. And even Higurashi, the developer of Castlevania, one we've been mentioning a lot, he was getting tired of seeing these games in the bargain bin, because people would either play them like, oh, I'm done, or they would beat it because they would play it so much without save states and bait and run. Oh, there's no point. Let me get rid of it so I can buy a new game.
Yeah.
Or they just, I played it enough. I need the new thing.
Yep.
And then he wanted to let's get them invested. And that point, they started realizing that they want to get you invested. They didn't fully realize it. We'll see, because the next generation really does a good job. But
Yeah.
that's where I go.
And then he made Castlevania Symphony of the Night. Like,
right.
Complete opposite, complete 180 on, oh, let me just play it and
Yes.
toss it out because I'm done with it. You know what I mean?
But regardless, though, that era of systems was, I feel, almost like a very quite peak of fun. It was like its focus was purely fun, I would say, out of more than any other generation, because they were just like games. They weren't trying to. They would be hard, but it's like, no, their focus was, no, we want you to play. We want you to keep playing. You know?
Yep. And that's when games started really doing a turning point, because then you had RPGs like Secret of Mana, which was like, holy crap, like cool, like for Super Nintendo, cool pixelation, cool color work, bright, vibrant, glitchy as all hell at times, but still, great story, like typical like story, like look, guy finds super cool sword, you turn into the hero, you find a few partners, you go destroy the thing that's going to destroy the world, even though there's a twist at the end. It's like, no, but I love you, but why? But that's a good story. And then like for Super Nintendo, there's a lot of games I played, but the ones that I remember the most was Secret of Mana, the Mario, freaking Mario RPG. Wait, that was for Super Nintendo, right? Mario RPG? Yeah, Mario RPG was Super Nintendo.
For Game Boy. Mm-hmm.
Final Fantasy VI, which was 3. Oh my god, that blew my mind. That blew my mind.
Probably my favorite Super Nintendo game is Kirby Superstar. That game is awesome.
The golf Kirby. The golf Kirby one.
No, the one where it's
no. It's like, that was mine for Kirby.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, that was mine for Kirby. That was my favorite. But the reason, like, but then you look at all these different style of games. You look at like like Secret of Mana. It's like, holy crap! You're like running around collecting items, leveling up. You could master your skills. You go this, you do this. Yes, it was. Yes, it was. Swasses.
I like that.
And it's one of those where it's like, holy crap! This is it. This is it. They need more games like this.
Yeah.
And then you got freaking like Final Fantasy, where it's like, oh my god, this story is so freaking dark. Wait, what? You're like, oh man, I'm almost at the end of the game. What the fuck just happened?
Sorry for your ears.
Yeah.
What?
I mean, the like RPGs on the NES and on from that generation, they also had story. They had like good story too. There was these games, but they couldn't evoke that kind of emotion because they couldn't do that much. There was less they could do with the graphics. There was less they could do with the sound. I love Legend of Zelda I love Link to the Past way more than I like the original Legend of Zelda, because it really just, the music is kick-ass. Everything, there's like nice shading, and the towns are so vibrant, and there's so much going on.
Way more depth.
Yeah, I can actually remember like a lot of the different characters from the game, like the way they look, because they were so different from each other, as opposed to just generic NPCs or anything like that. So,
and then we could talk about Super Nintendo all the time because that was like really, I would say, the turning point of games starting to really develop. And then
I think, yeah. Sorry.
You think? No, you're fine. I was just gonna go into 64 at this point, but then
I think there's an interesting thing that we shouldn't brush over if we're going to talk about the history of video games. And earlier, Greatest Gamer said that like fanboyism wasn't really a thing back in that time. But what is really important though is this: the 16-bit era had a war between Genesis and Nintendo, and what was maybe it was different. It was made different because they didn't have the power of the internet to magnify communication, but there was still a lot of like schoolyard rivalry for these two consoles. And what was cool about it was that they were each company, Sega and Nintendo, they were trying to one up each other, which led to better games.
yes,
So you had every time Nintendo pulled out like an amazing game, Sega would have to answer with an equally amazing. Every time there was a sequel to a Mario game or another spin-off Mario game on Super Nintendo, Sega had to pump out like a better Sonic game for the sequel. It was great. Like they were pushing each other to give you a better game. And that was nice.
Exactly. And now the Super Nintendo was like the major turning point. That's when I realized, man, I love games. I'm never gonna stop playing these because it's too in story. I hated reading. So like even though in the games I had to read to figure out where to go and what's going on, and then just like that's where I actually read was video games. I couldn't stand books. I also had a very hard time with literature when I was young. So that's a different story. But transferring from Super Nintendo, we got the Nintendo 64.
PS1 and Sega Saturn, I believe.
Yeah. No, Sega Saturn was out before that. I think that was out in between.
Well, whichever the Sega one that costed
Dreamcast.
So much. Was it Dreamcast? Oh, whatever.
No. Dreamcast was after. Saturn was before the Dreamcast. And yeah, you're right. Saturn was in the generation with the 64 and the PS1.
Yeah, okay.
But seeing how that gap went, yeah, they definitely were really pushing for advertising a lot. As a matter of fact, their sales increased by 3 to 2-fold once they went into the next generation. And now we're pumping in, and these numbers were intensified even more. And there was actually an increase of that. So think of that. From NES, we increased 3 times. From the Super Nintendo, and from the Super Nintendo we increased twice. But here's the thing, it didn't spread evenly, because if those of you who do or don't know, the Sega bombed. It was far too pricey, and the other two consoles were priced far more competitively. So their numbers increased, but they took away a lot from Sega. And then from there, all I can say is the numbers prove it statistically, and who knows how our experience is with Sega, but Sega's numbers never really rose, and that's where they are today. And it started from this generation. So from here on out, we might not hear as much about Sega. And now we'll start off. So this is a good way to end that segment and continue into on, so you can get as far as how the numbers go. And this is when they really started investing far more in commercials, and they already were starting. Like everything started with that generation, and from this one, they basically had already training, and they're like, all right, we know how to do this. Their marketing was intense. Like they would throw words and increasing that school rivalry that I was talking about. Because when the Super Nintendo, I practically didn't know it existed. But when the PS1 and all that stuff, like, oh yeah, no, there was like, it was mild, but it actually definitely existed, even in our part of the neighborhood where we didn't have a lot of money. Because now the advertisement reached everybody.
Yep.
And the pricing now was just 2 consoles.
And shouldn't necessarily be brushed over is that there's a crazy history to the development of the Sega Saturn. There was like internal rivalries between Sega of America and Sega of Japan, and originally Sega was approaching Sony, and Sony it was like so it was almost like professional wrestling or something. Sony and Nintendo were going to work together, but then Nintendo screwed over Sony. So then Sony went to Sega, and they were going to work together. And then Sega screwed over Sony. And then, Sega got messed up, got one-upped when they released the PS1 for, I believe it was $299 or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up. I forgot that. Thank you.
Yeah, no. You can find amazing videos specifically about the Saturn. I love the Sega Saturn because my friends had it. My friends had it at his house, but I never got to experience it too much because we played here and there. And after they moved away, I never heard about the Sega Saturn again. I remembered games like Virtua Fighter, Daytona USA, but like the Sega Saturn, unfortunately, it also was released ahead of time. They rushed the development on the console so they could release it out earlier in an attempt to, go against their competition, Nintendo and Sony. But that also backfired on them. KB Toys famously, or EB Games or whatever, I don't
EB
remember
Games,
at this
yeah.
point. Yeah, they famously did not want to stock. They refused to stock the Sega Saturn in their stores because they did that without warning or something like that, and that obviously hurt the console because it wasn't being sold in those stores. It's crazy. It's insane.
Right.
And then the Dreamcast came after that, but that didn't last very long.
Yeah.
So yeah, think about that. Sega basically at this point is out of the game, and then a new boy, Sony, comes in, which never would have came if Nintendo just played ball with them. So
did you guys talk about Dreamcast?
No, that's gonna be after this one. He touched on it.
Yeah, well, like, real quick with the Sega Saturn, I didn't even know that existed.
See.
Like, honestly, like, and I was getting, my grandma was like fucking spoiling the shit out of me. It was giving me a new game every week.
Wow.
Yes. So I played a lot, but a lot of them weren't that good. It was just like, I literally had drawers full of games, which I wish I still had. I would be rich right now.
Especially if you have Panzer Dragoon on the Saturn, let me tell you.
No, I didn't have that, but there was some other games I know I had that were expensive. Like, yeah, she was MVP, but we'll discuss why she was MVP later on another day. Anyway, on a side note, I never heard of the Sega Saturn, and I, like I said, had access to these games all the time. So it's like, I don't know how that one flopped, but yet now that's all I wanted to say. It's like, I never heard of it.
Hey,
like,
don't worry.
Yeah, never heard of
that. It didn't
that.
last very long. That's what it was.
And like I mentioned earlier, this is the start of where Sega, they practically don't even exist anymore. We can really say that honestly.
Yeah.
In most people's eyes.
Yeah.
There are 3. But and then the other thing is too, we noticed that the architecture started becoming far more of a bigger deal. Just look at the PS1 and the N64, how their chip, they literally were not the same console. Again, like you said, there's documentary you can watch about it, but long story short, is how we started noticing the start of, like you guys were talking about these RPGs and everything, and why they started going more towards PlayStation, because PlayStation was going towards that push. Just Metal Gear Solid alone, that enough said. Like that is to this day considered one of the best games of all time. Metal Gear Solid 1. You know? Yeah,
it got the 3, in my opinion, and I may get some flaking, but probably the 3 most important Final Fantasy games. It got 7, 8, and 9. It got. What's up?
Okay, 7 is okay.
He's probably one of the.
Okay. 7, great story. Great, like, just freaking, like, holy crap, decent, great gameplay. I mean, like, everything was good about it. My only gripe is I think 6 story was better, but that's a personal opinion. That's something that we're talking about games now. Now, when we got to PlayStation, oh my god, 7 was so godlike. Everyone just like went nuts, and that's what opened up the West Coast for JRPGs. That's when everyone was like, oh my god, this is awesome. They need to keep doing stuff like this. It was just like, oh. And then you got 8, which is yeah, then you got 8, and it's like it's good, but all right, draw.
They complicated it. They complicated the formula. But it is good from what I can tell.
It is good.
I like it a lot. I don't like playing it, which is kind of a problem for a video game, you know?
Yeah. And it's hard to keep your attention, but at that time it was a good game because it was a new system that they tried out and they realized, that's cool, but only once in a while to do it, not the whole game.
Yeah.
Okay, so
and then Nintendo missed out on that.
And then
they didn't get Final Fantasy on the 60. Imagine Final Fantasy 7 on the 64.
Right.
And then this is where now when we're in the PlayStation phase in transition, this is where everyone started getting spoiled. But hold on, cool. What you said we were taking time? Where are we at right now? For PlayStation, we got real spoiled. We got freaking saves. We're like mandatory now. You need to save the game. Like there was no real hard games where damn that quick. We weren't there weren't really like hard games where you had to like literally start all over from the beginning. It was expected that you save here, you use this to save, you load up your save file, you have that little cartridge that you put into the PlayStation on top of your controller, and had to filter through the saves, especially when you had those super big ones. Yeah. Whew. And we were starting to get spoiled, and that's where like games got a little bit easier, but then true gamers that played older ones realized, wow, these were easy, but you start finding the real hard games, and there weren't too many on once PlayStation started hitting for me. Like there weren't too many really like games where I'm just like, damn, this is hard. Like even Resident Evil, that was on PlayStation 1, right?
Yeah.
That wasn't even that hard.
Resident Evil is not that hard. What about Symphony of the Night though? Because I think that could be an interesting point too about how
I mean,
difficulty changes over time.
Yeah,
Because in the old days, it's purely you have to get past the obstacle. It's about the gameplay specifically. But I would argue that starting from PS1 or even onwards, like they found different ways to make games challenge. They found a way to really expand on what a challenge is in a video game. Symphony of the Night is not the hardest game. In fact, it could be considered pretty easy. But it's a game for a really long time I considered to be impossible because of how much you have. There's so much content in that game, and you have to go to like the most obscure part of the map just to make progress in beating the game. It's got to be like 40 hours. And again, there's no internet at the time, or there's no easy access to internet. It hasn't developed too well. And then difficulty just ends up being like,
and then
how am I going to get through all this?
Yeah, but then now, like every single generation we go through, it's just improvements upon what we have, and there's nothing really too revolutionary nowadays, except for MMOs. Like that was revolutionary, online gameplay. So like let's move to PlayStation 2, which is essentially like the same thing as PlayStation 1. It's same thing, just upgraded. Like literally it's the same genre, ton of freaking badass games, but nothing truly like revolutionary from PlayStation 1 to PlayStation 2. So, and then we get PlayStation. We could just skip over PlayStation 2 because like there really is nothing. Like
I actually do agree with you, but I was saying like for me, like we'll go back to like the just a bit on PS1, and I completely agree. I didn't play PS1. I played PS1 games later on, and he's completely right. PS2, that's when I was getting more of the spoil that he spoke of. We actually finally knew what memory cards are because it's not been a whole generation. But until then, games were basically harder for us because my uncle, he would play Resident Evil, and here's the thing, like he said. They got the hang of what they want to do. You want to play Final Fantasy? It's not that hard. Just dedicate yourself your time. Even Resident Evil. It's one of the hardest games you can hands-on play. But here's the thing. Imagine how hard it is when you don't have a save. It becomes immensely more hard. Because guess what? It's different for everybody. And my uncle, he would constantly, we wouldn't be able to save. So he'd have to keep playing Resident Evil 3 every single time. And the challenge in that is being able to get the hang of the movement down. That's where the challenge comes. And not freaking out when there's a zombie to you. That's a challenge, because the game itself is like, again, it's not that different. They haven't changed the NES, but they've adjusted it in the way that they like to, in their vision. And that's why Castlevania, in the beginning, it's hard, but from there on, it doesn't really get that much harder, past like the first boss. Yeah. And of course, like you said, and imagine in my position, I didn't have a memory card. I didn't know what Castlevania was either, but even if I did, well, I wouldn't, like to me, it would be, that game's impossible. But a game I did play was Mega Man X. And no, to this day, That game is Chad.
I forgot about that.
That game is Chad.
I forgot about that. That was Super Nintendo though.
No, PS1. No, like Mega Man X6. I didn't even play the original. I'm talking about the most Chad one of all of them. That game, like, that was the first, I would say, one of the first games that kind of like sparked an interest in me because I seen a giant X label. And when you're going into a teenager as a middle schooler, you're like, yo, that's cool as hell. Everyone's an X lord.
Mega Man X was originally on Super Nintendo.
Oh yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, I'm talking about, but
and that
I never
actually
touched
had
it.
save states. I forgot about that one.
And that's the thing. The cool thing about Mega Man X, what made it more accessible, is because you can put in the little code and everything, which I appreciate. It actually kept in mind. Again, developers, everyone was thinking different. And now we move on to the PS2 era. Yeah, it's a lot of the same thing, but they've gotten extremely unique. Some have become easier, but not in a bad way. Like, it's still retained. Like, just look at any Legend of Zelda game. It's like they just made it so it's not as brutal.
Okay, so as we carry on, the PlayStation 2 era is like the same thing, just upgraded graphics, and then there was GameCube. I think was at that era too, right?
Yeah, and the GameCube actually was struggling really bad.
Yeah, it was, but there was Smash Brothers is the major thing that came out for that. Then you had Mario Sunshine.
Super Mario Sunshine was amazing.
Yes, it was.
It's not it's not like
But-
difficult from what I remember, but
Yes,
it was
like
really
but
good.
like
It
from
was fun
those
as hell.
from like Super Nintendo to GameCube, and then N64 to GameCube, and then getting PlayStation 1 to PlayStation 2. It wasn't like truly a revolutionary thing. There was nothing new for us. It was just like
More.
better graphics, more area, vast worlds.
I
It
mean,
also had a lot of bad. It had a lot of the worst versions of the games. It truly
Yeah,
was
right.
underpowered.
one thing I want to add for you guys is like thinking like, I mean, how many of you even cared so much about graphics? Like for me, I felt like a PS2 game looked the same as like an Atari to me. That's just how it was to my mind as like a child. How about you guys? Like, I mean, I know there's like an actual, but like, did you even think like there was a difference in PS1 and PS2? For me, literally, I didn't see the difference. As weird as that is, I didn't see.
There was only a slight difference. Some games had the graphics, like they utilized the graphics properly, but at the same point, it like literally was just a slight graphic increase.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's because we still
looked
looked at it as pixels. So you guys in chat, tell me if you feel like, yeah, there's obviously a difference. We look at it now, but
Yeah.
in your mind, when you play, like, you just a pixely game. You know, to me, that didn't change in GameCube era.
I think another thing worth noting though is like at that point Nintendo had not. That was when Nintendo started to fall behind, but they weren't too far behind just yet. It wasn't until the later console generations where it just became permanent that Nintendo is far inferior in terms of tech to the other companies. So yeah, the difference may not be that big. I do remember being pretty upset that like I didn't have a PS2, I didn't have an Xbox, so I wasn't getting the best version of a specific game. But I mean, I was still able to play stuff like no, Resident Evil 4 didn't come out on GameCube. I don't know, but I was still able to play a lot of great games on it. What really saved the console for me was the games, and
Yeah.
there wasn't even any question about it. Like, you know, what was the most important part of that piece of hardware was that they were putting out really good games, and they were.
No, I got nothing.
Okay,
I'm trying to transition.
No,
out of
you're
this.
right. And then it's like, no, he's actually right, because around the PS2 era, it was so big. Here's the biggest thing about the PS2, even though it's a shortcoming, like we're making it short, but it's like, because the PS2 to this day is one of the best-selling consoles, the PS4 barely got over it. Can you believe that? The PS4 barely actually beat the numbers of the PS2. The PS2 is the best-selling console. And again, you notice how we didn't mention the Dreamcast. And another thing I forgot to mention earlier, Doom, Phenomenon, whatever, but that was PC. The PC, we're not even talking about PC too. You gotta realize that.
Jesus Christ, Dreamcast.
You know?
Dreamcast only had a handful of good games.
And you know what they had? They
But it was short-lived.
Yes, exactly.
And here's the thing we want to mention. By this point, the arcades were already dead. The Dreamcast had godlike arcade ports, one being Street Fighter 3,
Marvel vs. Capcom 2.
Yeah.
But
that was the only one that was the only one that was really doing good was Tekken, Marvel vs. Capcom, and that was really about it. Other games were doing well. Street Fighter 3, nope. And then they had a Dreamcast port.
Didn't they have Soul Calibur?
They did.
Yeah.
But again, look at
they had some fucking great games on.
They did. It's the best arcade.
Sega Dreamcast.
It's the best arcade machine.
That was his last Sega console, wasn't it?
It is. It was. And it had some of the best arcade ports. It was basically for an arcade port. It was godlike, but I never played an arcade at that point. They were.
That's right. It was. That's when I played it.
So you guys can see, like, it in tandem with the arcade. They're like, let's make our stuff so close to the arcade hardware. It wasn't the arcade perfect, but no, the arcades were already dying. And heck, the Xbox was coming into that. The only
Xbox,
people I knew,
PS3.
the only
no
original Xbox.
No, oh, fuck that thing. Don't care.
Nobody. Like,
no, I didn't play it.
But just to end it off, the PS2 for me was the biggest important thing, because that's when it had so many games. It was so available, and to this day, PS2 actually has some of the most games. Shovelware or not, it has the most. It sold the most.
Yeah.
Memory cards were actually plentiful, and there were people that could explain to you now. This is the second generation, and. Yeah, I mean, just like Guitar Hero. I played Guitar Hero a lot, but for me, the biggest things is when I started saying I wanted to be more of a gamer was Guitar Hero.
As we go into
Resident Evil 4,
the Xbox 360, the Wii, and PlayStation 3. Now, this is where the major turning point came. This is where it was revolutionary. Yeah, of course, we had the graphics improved. We had the Wii with the motion controls,
right.
But then we have online. I could play against you. And when I was a kid, I couldn't fucking do that. I could play against you, and you're on freaking the other side of the world. I could take a hole straight down through the center of the earth, and you're playing directly on the other part of the side of the earth, and I could play against you. You could not do that until the 360, the PS3, and the Wii generation. Now, with those three systems, the Wii fell short because it relied on the motion controls and the tech wasn't there yet. And the games, they had some truly good games, but they're like, they didn't really suck you in. That's when I started falling off from Nintendo. I had a 360 first. Man, I like the games that are on it, but tell me why I went through 4 360s that burnt out on me, and I had to buy 4 360s. I just decided to get the PS3 because 360s just pissed me the fuck off, and I still had my original PS3 until I sold it to get the PS4. Well, I didn't sell it. I still had it after the PS4, but like I sold it like around that time because I had no use for it anymore.
What about you?
I still have my fatties right here on the floor.
Oh.
It's the original.
It's your footrest now.
No, it works. It works, and I keep it around because they took the backwards compatibility out of the Slim, so that was important to me, and I decided to keep the old one. Yeah, I really like that. I really like that console generation because everyone was doing something. Well, okay. I'm gonna respond to something in the chat, but I actually think that the Wii was not the best console. I kind of don't like the Wii, and I'm gonna tell you why. Because it felt like it was just more of a, it felt like it was a big gimmick and it was very trendy. So it was appealing to sort of more casual audience and just people who don't really game because you had Wii Sports and you had like oh, we could just bowl together, but and then because of all the motion control, they had to compromise on the capability of the system, and games just look bad. It wasn't in HD. There was no HDMI port onto the Wii original. You couldn't get like an HD signal with it, at least not originally. Eventually, they released the cable, but so. And then on top of that, I really felt like there weren't too many great games on the Wii.
No, there weren't. The Zelda was good, but not Skyward Sword.
Okay, the Zelda. Wait, say that again.
The Zelda one, but the second Zelda for like the Wii, Twilight Princess. I love that Zelda.
Twilight Princess originally came out on the GameCube, though.
Oh yeah,
so they originally released it for GameCube, and then they
I didn't play it until the Wii, though. Like personally,
that's totally fair. I actually completely forgot that was a thing until you just brought it up. But Skyward Sword by itself would not have been a bad game. But the problem is that, and I bought the component cable specifically to upgrade it, to make it look better. It looked so bad. And on top of that, they forced the player to buy a Wii Motion Plus controller. You had to play it with the Wii Motion Plus.
Yeah, that was with Skyward Sword, right?
Yeah, that was for Skyward Sword. And at that point, it was the final nail in the coffin to, I think I'm done with Nintendo, because I was so pissed. I was so pissed off about that. I'm like, why can't I just play with the regular remote? This is such a blatant cash grab. And then you know what was the worst part? After I bought my $60 Wii Motion Plus controller, it still worked like crap. It still did not work properly. Link would not like react, even though it was supposed to be better motion control. So I'm like, why was this required if it doesn't even work?
Yep.
That was. I never thought that we would see something so embarrassing with a Zelda game.
I know, it was Twilight Princess. I thoroughly enjoyed, but I didn't even play I played Skyward Sword. I beat like 2, maybe 3 dungeons. I'm like, what the hell is this garbage? Like, it was a Zelda, but I did not enjoy it.
I thought I thought that the game world, the music from it, the story was fine. I thought it was all fine, but it was unplayable because it looked terrible. Even if you tried to, improve that, and then it also played terribly because you had to play with the motion control. That game would have benefited from what Twilight Princess had, which was that you could get it on the previous console or the next console. If they made a Skyward Sword for the Wii U, where you didn't have to do that, where you could just use the normal controller, that would have been incredible. But they never did it. They never did that.
Yeah, no, it's funny because for me, it started right around like the GameCube was when like we didn't care so much. Like, yeah, it was nice and everything, but by that point for me, it was already where I didn't care for Nintendo, because at that point, like Xbox, I barely knew existed. And even when I did, only white rich people own it. Okay. No, seriously, that's how it felt for me. And it was just PS2. PS2 was life. And it wasn't like, I think that's when a hint of it. And then when, the Wii, you're right. the Wii actually is one of the best-selling consoles, but has some of the worst sales in games.
It only was best-selling because they targeted
the casuals.
The casuals.
And it succeeded. Most people just own Wii Sports, and that's it.
It was a fad.
I mean, honestly, there's only maybe like, what, 10% of people like us, and then the rest 90% are just casuals.
Right.
Like, we actually take games seriously.
And I remember around the era where it really started for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
I remember, and not to get too all critical about how some people live their lives or how dedicated you are to gaming, but I remember when that came out, when the Wii came out, there was like, first off, they called it the Revolution, which I thought was badass, but then they changed it to the Wii.
I remember that, like, Wii! But the thing is, it's easier to remember because it's one syllable. The stupider, the stupider or like less things in something it's easier to get in someone's head.
Yeah. It's easier to do. It gets stuck in somebody's head, and I remember around that time when the console came out, they had lounges in like Manhattan where you could go, and I forget they had free drinks, like just regular beverages, not like alcohol, but they had like free drinks, and you'd all hang out, and there were Wii consoles all over the place with Wii Sports set up, so you could just like go and have a good time, and I thought about it, I'm like, that actually I think I attended it, and I'm like, that's fine and all, but none of these people feel like gamers, and Wii Sports, for what it's worth, like, it's whatever. It's such a boring experience. I would rather be playing Zelda or Mario or something like that. But we didn't get that.
We didn't get that until late. Like, no, I mean, the new Zelda until late, but we got Twilight Princess. But it still was like, eh. I mean, it wasn't that. It was. I loved it, but it still wasn't like. I liked the story more so than the gameplay. Well, the gameplay had some cool mechanics, but it was kind of a mix of Link to the Past. That's why I kind of liked it. But anyway, and like that's what the Wii kind of fell short. The Xbox 360 had so many problems with it, and we started to regret buying it. But the fact that you could play online against people, you had to pay a monthly fee, but you could play online against people. That's awesome. And then you got the PlayStation 3 where you could do the same thing, but there were so many good games on PlayStation 3. And now it's like, we're moving on to like nowadays. And like, when you're playing a game, like on PS4 or the new, what is it? Something Xbox something. I don't even know. But then you got the Nintendo Switch, which the Switch is revolutionary in a sense also. Like, they finally decided, let's just stick with handheld. Let's be the god of handhelds, which they are right now. Nintendo owns handhelds, and it's revolutionary because you could play online. You could do anything you want with a major system. You just don't have the graphics and power. But they're doing it right with the games and not being stupid about it. And then you go back to PS4, you got these games that you're looking at, you're going, holy crap, like perfect prime example that comes out in about 45 days is Final Fantasy VII Remake. You look at Final Fantasy VII when it first came out back in the 90s, I think it was, right? Yeah, the 90s is 20 years old. On PlayStation 1, and you look at the remake and compare them side by side, holy shit, have we come a long way. And what's crazy is that's what we expect in games, like same with God of War. When you play games nowadays, you expect it to, like, for AAA titles, it has to be script like a movie. The music score has to be godlike, orchestrated. It can't be lacking, or it doesn't suck you in. It has to build the right the mood of the scenario. And now the graphics have to be so clear, crisp, and smooth and non-laggy. And then the gameplay has to be fitting to all of that and still be fun. The pressure that these people have now to make games is insane. And comparing it to all the old stuff, what we look for in a game now is insanely higher than what we ever expect. You look at Pog, and then you look at Final Fantasy Remake, you're like, holy shit. And we need games to be like this now to want to play them. Like, there's not too many games that you could sit there and be like, oh, I want to play that looks like poop. That looks like 8-bit. Like, there isn't. Like, you got an 8-bit game, it's like, I don't want to play this. It's kind of boring. It's slow, clunky, and I mean, but at the same point, Square Enix released a game called, oh, what was it? It was a basic old RPG. It was hand drawn, but it looked like 8-bit esque. Oh, what was that game?
By Square Enix?
Yeah.
Three Dot Game Heroes?
No.
No, that's Atlas.
It was a turn-based RPG, and you got to choose characters, and you get to do each character's different story.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't remember it either. But this now, like, you look back and look at games now, it's like, whoa. We never expected this. Did you expect to play God of War if you ever played it and feel like you're playing a movie?
Yeah. Definitely. The standards have totally increased, and I mean, there's a lot that we could say about this console generation, but yeah, I mean, it's just come so far. It's like with movies, like you wouldn't go to a theater and watch a black and white silent movie where they like do the little title cards to tell you what's happening.
Unless it's supposed to be meant, unless like they made it for that.
Yeah,
Right.
because now we expect that movies everything in movies is CG and it's all high production and the filters and all the sound effects and all that stuff. So
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, we skipped a bit. I mean, we went right into it, but I will cover what I was trying to say before. Is around the time we were talking about the PS3, I was switching into the PS3 from the PS2. I literally had a Windows 95 machine playing Doom. This is one thing we didn't cover, but look how we didn't mention PC. And PC, I'm gonna bring it up later, and it's gonna link to what they're saying too. PC literally was behind consoles around the NES era. Doom came around after, and it was mind-blowing because you could scroll like a Nintendo system, but it's not a Nintendo system. Long story short, it was amazing. But look how many of us know that. And it wasn't even real 3D. Doom was not real 3D. We move forward, Quake and everything. The FPS genre started moving slowly. It started on the PC, and it slowly moved towards consoles. With Xbox One, PS2 a little bit. They had ports, even the PS1 for Quake, but they weren't very good. PS2, and then we moved to the 360. Oh, now these things, not only are we getting basically full ports of the game, like Doom looks amazing on the Xbox, and in 360 Quake, actually, like, the thing is, online has always existed since PC, but you had your dial-up connection. No one was really doing that. PS2 had online, but look at how we easily forgot that. That's why I think this is good.
I knew it did.
But for basically,
but I didn't get to use it. And I was getting a game every freaking week.
So yeah, it practically didn't exist. So internet truly did not exist until these eras of games because they made it so accessible. And Microsoft did a good job. Yeah, it had to be wired, but I know for a lot of people, they would go out to your place and even hook it up for you and do everything. You didn't have to do anything. And as obviously as teenagers and kids, we didn't know what the hell that was. I barely even knew what dial-up was. And look at how everything's changed. Things have moved more PC, and PC was always the focus on graphics. And we joined them. We joined them in that. And here's the thing: it all started in PS3, so it hasn't changed. We all things started being like movies. Oh, and even when I looked at a PS2 to PS3, I was like, my mind already was like, this is real life. Like, even though we look at it now, like, okay, we see it's 720p, but you saw like hair, like even if it was just like one hair, your mind was blown. You didn't think people could have non-square faces. And then they started pushing these cutscenes and everything because now you can. And they were much closer to PC architecture. Architecture was starting to move away from the GameCube, the PS2, and the Xbox were 3 different machines. Not the most different, but extremely different. Not as drastic as the N64 and the PS1. Mm-hmm. Things were becoming standardized. You notice everything slowly is becoming standardized. Mm-hmm. And now we have games like indie games. Like, games aren't even the same thing anymore. They're like in 3 categories. There's your indie games, which are the core of what a game is. Gameplay. Then there's your ones who are story and game, and then ones that are just straight up like a movie. The PS3 was the era, or 360 PS3 Wii was the era that started this, and this is when people fell off from the Wii, because the Wii lacked this a lot. The only games it had was Dark Side Chronicles and Umbrella Chronicles, and they were rail shooters. It still had that almost arcade vibe. Yeah, it was a story, but we're like, still feels like a game. And I think they covered the Wii very well. My friend had it, and I played Tatsunoko vs. Capcom and Bakugan on that. And that's really about it. That's the only reason I'd actually buy a Wii. That and Metroid Prime.
I actually just wanted to throw in a quick side note here, and that's that I remember the exact moment when I upgraded from CRT to HDMI or HDTV. Yeah, because, and again, like, graphics weren't such an issue for me, but up until that point, I had played the 64, I had played the GameCube. Any of those consoles like was in my house, it was being played on a on a 720p CRT. I guess it would be 720p or maybe 480.
Heck, those are rare.
A CRT, a regular old CRT,
Oh, CRT,
TV
yeah, no, regular, yeah, no.
with like a flat screen on it. It wasn't curved, it was flat, which was nice.
Cool.
But otherwise, it was just a regular old CRT TV. And I was playing Fallout on my PS3. Up until that point, I had played all the PS3 games on a CRT, including MGS4. But then I was so sick of how terrible Fallout 3 looked on a CRT that I decided that, okay, so at this point, I'm going to save up some money and make the upgrade. And I got my first HD TV, like flat screen type of whatever HD TV. And it was mind blowing how much better. I was like, wow, everything that I played before on this TV looks like garbage to me now.
I'm glad you brought that up. I'm glad you brought that up.
Because I remember that
you were just talking about that recently on your streams.
Yeah.
So, and like, let's try to wrap this up now.
Oh, okay,
because sure. I'm sure we're past an hour by like 10 minutes, if not more.
Yeah, it's a lot. This is a big.
It was a lot we had to go through. But point being, like, we sit here when we play games now. All right, we're gonna go around the table. What I expect in a game now, it has to have good music. If the gameplay sucks, story sucks, and the music is not there, I'm not gonna play it. Because the music is what really captivates me. I'm a musician. I'm an artist. Not like artists like this, but like creation of content. Like, I need that good music. If it doesn't suck me in, I don't care. That's the thing. Like, it just doesn't, like, it's not as whatever. But then if the music is good and those two other things, no, if the gameplay sucks and the story's not there, oh well, the music sucked me in for me to play it. But then now when you play games, you expect all of that to be good, because if it's not there, no one's gonna play your games nowadays. You need to spend millions of dollars to get a freaking phenomenal AAA game for everyone to want to buy it and keep replaying it and keep putting more money into it, like with microtransactions and like just to keep the game alive and the companies alive. Because a lot of people don't realize games have been $60 for what, years now?
Yeah.
About like a decade.
And even adjusting for inflation, $40 was basically $60 back then for the NES era.
Yeah,
they've genuinely, there's a documentary talking about how they've never changed their price and they're too scared to change it. Keep going.
well, the thing is, I would be scared too, but the thing is, the game prices haven't gone up, so they have to find a way to get people to spend more money on the game. So I understand why there's microtransactions. It makes sense. And DLC, it makes sense. It sucks, but it makes sense. But the fact these AAA games have all this, I expect, when I buy a game, I expect it to be good. Now, if I'm playing a first-person shooter, as long as it shoots good and feels right, I'll play it. A fighting game, it has to feel right. Like, depending on the genre, my expectations are different. But if I'm going to go for my main field, which is action-adventure RPG, that game better be damn good. Square Enix, you fuck up Final Fantasy Remake, I'm going to kick your fucking ass. But anyway, it has to be good. It has to be on that level, or I'm not going to get enthralled in it. I'm going to lose interest in it. Like, I can't even put an example. Tales of Berseria. That was a PS3 game, right? Yeah. Or no, it was PS4. It was PS4.
And PS3.
It was, so it was PS3.
Yes.
The combat was lame, the music wasn't that good, and it was like, whatever. But Tales of Symphonia had great music, great story, and great gameplay. And I played that to the end because it sucked me in. And that's for action adventures. Now, let's go on to you, and you're like, or you can go. Okay, we'll go counterclockwise this time. Yeah. Your turn. Your turn.
Mash, you go.
For what? What are we going?
Your expectations of games, like as in now, and like go on your main field of what your genre of what you play most of the time.
Okay, well, so yeah, games have gone through an insane metamorphosis from when it was just literally Pong. It was just a black screen with two squares, a line, and two numbers on it, and also the Pong ball. But you know, a lot has happened, and sometimes I feel like the retro games are they're irreplaceable. Even if looking back at them, sometimes we feel like they don't look as good, they don't control as well, or something like that. There isn't that much in this game. Like they're irreplaceable. But yeah, getting back to the point, today's gaming industry has a lot of flaws to it, despite all the great development that the medium as a whole has had, like the improvements in technology, improvements in just like what's capable with video games. There's a lot of problems in the industry, and I expect issues when I pick up a game. I think this could be a really good point for if we do another episode about like gaming as a whole.
I agree.
But yeah, I expect a lot of issues when I pick up a AAA game. You know, people they're gonna need. There's gonna be a huge day one patch. There might be issues connecting to online matches. There may be, you know, a whole lot of microtransactions that take away from the experience of just playing a video game. And that's kind of what I expect now. What I find as the bastion of like, this is still great. This is still gaming. This is essentially picking up where video games left off. You know, where the retro games, like at some point in this discussion, you probably have noticed that they kind of lost their way, you know, the retro games, because as it got bigger, it got more commercial, it got more about investors and stuff like that. So I think indie games are a fantastic bastion of like a last hope for the industry, because they don't really care too much about the financial aspect of it. They are hardworking game creators, developers, artists, musicians that want to make the best video game possible. That's not always true, you know. It's not nothing's
I mean,
perfect.
okay, with indie games, real quick, it's the fact that they have the leeway and time to do it at their own leisure. And they don't expect to get paid right away. They expect to make the game, then hopefully get paid. Problems with like
that's also not true because it's developed.
It depends on the company. It depends on the company, though.
Yeah, it's gotten bigger to the point where even indie games have like a smaller version of that problem, which is that yeah, I mean, they have crunch, they have deadlines, they do have some investors, but at the end of the day, it's not like this giant conglomerate is pumping out another Call of Duty or another Battlefield or something like that. It's legitimately like this dude that was been in the industry for like 10, 15 years has a great idea for a game, and he knows a bunch of artists, and he knows a bunch of animators, and they have a whole QA team, you know, like it's to me, it's a continuation of where video games kind of lost their way. And that's why I love indie games. I also love Western developers too, like for JRPGs mostly, or like Japanese fighting games, because they also keep some of those core values of making, like, we're here to make a great video game. We're not just here to pump out something that's gonna make a bunch of money for me. So yeah, man, like I expect a lot from video games. I wanted to have a lot of those good things, but I'm also kind of conscious about the placement of like the invisible hand of investors and financial, and like all the financial backers and whatnot. And you know, I want to play an experience that was created by somebody that likes video games, that cares about video games. You know, I feel like I didn't answer the question there.
No, I think
you got what you wanted out, though. That's all that matters.
I'll finish it up. But as they're absolutely right in so many things. I'll only like add a little bit, but look that era. Whenever I talk about the PS3 at some point, we all are in the same level, and this is why I agree. I completely agree with indie games. Like whenever I list these sections, that section, the other two, where it's like some games are the both, and they may be okay, whatever. They're split. You guys don't play Neo religiously like I do. That game is basically like the core of an indie game, and a game doesn't have a lot of cutscenes, but it has them. But again, then you have your publishers and everything, and then indie games are in that section where it's like you just come and have fun. That's why we like indie games, or you know, even NES games. Your expectations were already met. You just go and play and have fun. That's it. Yep. Your expectations, like, they're high and you enjoying them, and it succeeds in that enjoyment. Mm-hmm. And look in the PS3 era, we all suddenly became experts because we were forced to. Oh, now I have to know what a component is. I know what and slowly, and now, internet exists. Oh, how can I get it on my system? All these things came flooding at once. It basically, the PS3 era determined whether or not this was going to be your hobby. Simple as that. Because not a lot of people are like, I don't want to know what an HDMI is. I don't want to pay this much for a PS3 because this is expensive. And yeah, and that's, for me, that is extremely true. I agree with a lot of things what they say. And to the point, I will say, I don't buy Western games at all. Like mine's is too long. I will have to make a video on my own. But this is what the word genius means. Either means like talented. When someone's really talented, say he edits way faster than all of us, we'd call him a genius, right? That's like a talent. For me, and there's another one actually. This is Beethoven. He is known for composing music. It seems off track, but I'll get to it. And he can compose music, but he was deaf. And you think how does he do that? And we're like, that's a talent. He's like a genius. You find ways to do stuff in ways that aren't. Like there's even artists to this day that they will make songs off of colors. Let me tell you now, you guys. Simple. I'm a genius. I can smell games. I'm not even lying to you. So for me, games, when I play them, there's a smell to them. Again, I'm making it short. And Western games feel depressing. I play games now. I can feel the workers' depression through the games. And see, look, he shakes his head.
You can do that on some games, yeah.
Look at that.
Like it's lifeless.
Yeah,
exactly. And that's, for me, it's like we're making it even to a point, like it's almost so arbitrary, but we can all agree, like, I have to agree. And it's getting too political. Battlefield 5, I straight up refuse because of how political it got. See, look at how games have just changed. It's not even about having fun anymore.
No, it's about,
and then we care so much about graphics and all this stuff. And that's why, like, I love Neo and Doom. Neo is like an old school NES game, but with modern graphics. That's why I love it. And it has everything that we have now. It's like a fighting game, but with an NES style. That's why I love Neo. It's an NES game. And that's why Dark Souls is loved. It focuses so much on the gameplay. And Dark Souls I don't like because that doesn't have a straight frame rate. It doesn't succeed in the modern era of what I like about today's game. We know what frame rate is. Please hold 60 frames. So that's why Neo's my favorite. And then Doom, it's like, dude, literally, I thought it was going to fail, but Doom is a classic. Remember, I mentioned it. I played it on a Windows 95 machine in 2008, and to this day, I can see why it's one of the best games.
Yep.
Very few games can maintain what made it a game and then bring what we like about the modern era. We just wanted to look good and play good. That's it. Same base of what the game is, just make it look better. When you think about it, it's simple. That's what I really want. That's what I simply want. And guess what? I can feel it. I'll look at the game. Like, I'm telling you, bro, I'm psychic. I'm like, Final Fantasy VII, it's probably going to be good. I think they're going to maintain it. But is it going to be Neo or Doom? Nah, I think Neo 2 and Doom 2, best games of all time. Hands down, I'm calling it now. That's just how I feel. And that for me. For everybody, it's different. My opinion is not a fact. Let's set that straight. Everyone has their opinion.
Wait, we got a question.
I would love to. What's up? Yeah, I actually have an additional question, but let's go with Swasage first.
And that is
We'll answer these few questions, and we'll call it a night. And we could probably just continue this conversation next week, as in like more deeper depth of what we expect of games, as like episode 2.
It's a lot, but I condensed.
I'm actually gonna be at PAX next week, so I can't.
No, 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
That's fine. What was your question?
So
Swastic.
I would love to know.
We'll take yours first, then. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I would love to know when was like a recent time when you thought a game was gonna be good, but it absolutely, like, everything told you that this game was gonna take off, but it didn't, and vice versa. When you thought it was gonna be terrible, but it was. I feel like we get a lot more of it ends up being terrible.
I agree.
Lord of Darkness, Castlevania. I mean, it wasn't terrible, but it was lacking.
Underwhelming.
Yeah, a lot of people say that. And like I said, I thought Doom was going to be terrible. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy 15, I thought I was going to... I mean, I like it, but it really didn't blow up like Square Enix wanted to. I think we can all unanimously agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay, what's an example where the players killed a great game? Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite.
And I agree with that. See, we're too different. Like, I mean, we'll let what you say, Mash.
Now, Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. The reason is, the gameplay was phenomenal. The graphics were shitty. The music was subpar, but the game itself was so fucking good. The mechanics of the fighting game was great, but the fact of they didn't have what everyone don't even bother. That game doesn't exist, and the fact that they did a year service, that's so freaking stupid.
Yeah, we're not getting.
That's.
I'll let him do the MVC one.
The MVCI was pretty much, they didn't have the right characters, and they didn't go for the crowd. They rushed the game instead of doing it, or doing it right. And if they did it right, they would have had a hit because the gameplay was on point. It was one of the best fighting games I've ever played for gameplay wise. Now, what about you, Smash? What is a game that you could...
Mash, like the show.
I'm gonna call you Smash. Well,
but yeah.
Mash.
I'll go back.
Then people are gonna think I'm a Smash player. But yeah, I'd actually like to tweak the question. Because I can't come up with one where
Yeah,
the
that's
players killed the game.
Like,
But I have a great example.
That's one that really got killed. Real.
I have a great example of one where where more of like the community at large, or specifically like the internet, and just like
MVC.
you could say everybody just killed a great game, and that's what that was actually Fez, the game by Phil Fish, because the game itself is actually pretty good.
I don't even know the game exists.
Yeah.
It's like this indie game, and there was a mega controversy on the internet because that's what happens with games now.
Of course.
Now that it's under a giant everything is under a giant magnifying glass.
Mhm.
And Phil Fish doesn't make video games anymore.
Oh,
and
I know what you're talking
game,
about now.
Yeah, that game is we never got a sequel to it. It was like it was a giant firestorm on the internet that burned like for months or whatever. And it was kind of sad because actually he made a really great game. They made a movie out of that. There's a documentary about
There is,
or I believe it's about, or it features him and him.
It's about it, and it features him as well.
So yeah, I mean that would be a great case, and that also perfectly like shows how the industry has changed. Remember, we talked about video games from beginning to end. This did not exist. This was not a thing back in the day.
There wasn't a thing called Twitter. There wasn't a thing called MySpace, Facebook, Instagram. There was none of that shit. All we had was, hi, how are you today? How was class in 2nd grade? I don't even know what the fuck I was just doing,
and
but
even how you're saying controversy, remember how I mentioned earlier Third Strike didn't do well? We still do have the MVCI didn't do well for the biggest reason, because I'm a Marvel's Capcom fan. I come for the characters before the gameplay. I'm not arguing the gameplay. I believe him. It's great. But it looks too ugly. It doesn't have the characters I want. And Third Strike suffered the same thing. It didn't have your Guile, your Ryu, your Chun-Li. So we still do have that in a sense. But now, like he said, we have it in a magnifying glass. And literally the entire fighting game community just straight up said MVCI no. Third Strike, people didn't like. They've seen it and they're like, whatever. You know, it was a passive. It just passively died. Whereas MVCI, everyone was like, oh, you know, I was one of them. I'm not gonna deny it, and I'm still say that.
Yeah,
that game. That game is ugly.
It is ugly, but the thing is, the gameplay was god tier.
And remember, these are our expectations. Look at how it's just, you know,
like our expectations is freaking like being godlike, the great acting, the great scenes. Like, none of that was there besides the gameplay and the community that was revolved around it. They were pissed that there was no X-Men characters.
Yep.
I was pissed because my main characters was Gambit and freaking Wolverine. I would always use one of those two. But they didn't have it in MVC3. They didn't have Gambit in there, and Wolverine was wonky. I didn't like him, but he was top tier. But then when MVCI came out, there was no X-Men, and I'm like, what the fuck? But they had Zero. That was the only thing that kept me playing, was Zero.
See, and then the thing is, look at how our expectations, like, oh, now we have a history and legacy with this stuff.
Yes.
And again, going back to what he's saying, the magnifying glass, everything's like, again, even political. Disney basically ruined MVCI, and that's why
it did. Oh yeah.
I mean, remember, this is further biting. Like, everyone, I'm telling you now, I don't watch. The only thing I watch was like John Wick. Disney. If I could burn them for owning Star Wars and Marvel, I really would. Everything, and it's okay to a degree, as long as you don't go crazy. It's okay. Now we know who the people who make our games. Our money speaks words. The Division right now is selling for $5. So it's both a negative and a positive. You know, we have a bigger voice than we ever did back then.
All right, I got an idea. Let's cut this and make this into a two-parter. We'll do this in 2 weeks. Are you good in 2 weeks?
I'll be good in 2 weeks. But let's let the people like what's the direction for the next one, because we covered the entire evolution of the entire timeline of games basically, and then we've added so what do we want to talk about next?
We could talk about our favorite genres of the games that we play, like our favorite genres of like why we like them.
Dang, see, for me that's hard because I play everything.
What if we talk about the challenges of the industry today?
Yeah,
like,
you know,
that's a deep topic.
That one's not bad either. Like,
the problems, you know,
both
kind of like what we just ended off here. I mean, there's, like I said in my little final thoughts piece, there's a lot of problems in gaming in 2020 in terms of the industry. So
you can't say white male in Battlefield 5.
The death of Couch Co-op.
I know.
See, like that one's like that depends. We want to keep going happy or sad? Because let's be honest, it's gonna get sad. I'm telling. I said I can feel the depression in the games, man. I'm like, I'm so sorry.
All right. Well, we're way past an hour, and I think we touched up on a lot of things. Does anyone in the chat want to talk about something before we take off and continue this in 2 weeks?
Yeah, let's wait for chat. But I will answer one question. I don't know why. I just can smell games. Like it started with Grand Theft Auto 4. Literally, just things like it smells like Grand Theft Auto. Every game just has a unique smell. That's the only way I could describe it. I'm literally sorry. Genius 3 it's like black. It's like antimatter. We know it exists, but we can't explain it.
I think he's on something.
Mind you, I also never took like drugs in high school either, so that's not it.
He's not joking about that.
Final Fantasy has a smell to it for me.
It's something in the water.
Something in that McDonald's
water.
Water.
I know for sure some of you had to be like, but I that's the best I can tell you, man. You can ask me how it smells. I'm like, it smells like Grand Theft Auto. Grand Theft Auto smells like Grand Theft Auto.
All right. So, okay.
What are the questions?
Questions. When a company censors a game. Whoa. Well, the thing is,
Google makes a good point. Holy shit.
We'll go to Google real
quick.
Death of
Couch Co-op, that's a good one too.
Yes, the Death of Co-op Couch. We'll start there. Well, that's when online happened. That's when PS3, Xbox 360. Yeah, the death of that started to happen. But I mean, there was no point. Why am I going to waste? It's as much as like the interaction we're having right now is great. But the sad thing is nowadays he wasted his time to come over here to do this when he could have did it in his luxury of his own home. And the fact that we don't have that the physical connection is what lacks nowadays. But that's a whole different freaking. Save that for next week. God damn.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
That is.
When a company censors a game now, Joypad, that depends on actual local laws in your country and region.
Someone mentioned Manhunt earlier. That's literally banned in countries.
Yeah, so there's a lot of games banned in Australia. Like, so it's like in other countries, like you can't play certain games or they have to be censored for. So the game company has to censor it to be able to allow it. So that's the thing.
Thank you, Joypad. I agree.
No, you're right, but the problem is the country controlling that.
That's been since the ESRB exists. Thanks to Combat. No said. But that's another topic. And me personally, like Joypad, I think if any of you guys know who the quartering is, we enough said. That's enough said, and we're not gonna get into that.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know anything about PC gaming, so I would just be opinionated on that.
Which is fine, I think.
Yeah, that's true.
Also, Valve and Steam with their censorship too.
Censorship's just in a very weird area right now. That's a whole lot, and I think we should leave it at that.
We could even go on all multiple platforms like Twitch, Twitter, and like Instagram, like all of them, like how it's censored and not censored, and what it is. TikTok. Oh God, don't get me going on there. Woo! I hate that platform, but I love it.
I hate YouTube and Twitch for censoring my words.
Yeah. All right, guys. No, he'll be later on tonight. But I'm going to be doing TikToks tonight. They censored Conker's Bad Day.
They did. Yeah. Again.
Yes.
Later.
All right. Bring these topics up. Whoever's here in 2 weeks, we'll start around 6:30, like we did this time. But I think that's it for today. We could keep going
it's
hours on this topic, and I personally don't have that much time.
Yeah.
Well, I'm FinalHarps.
This is GreatestGamer00 here.
This guy, and then this guy over here on that screen.
Mashthestampede.
Mash the Stampede.
He's gonna get it eventually.
Mash the Stampede.
Get a couple more podcasts. We'll do it.
Oh yeah. We'll get a name.
It's good that we were able to follow the structure and everything, and we added on to it, which is the main point. And then it's everything. It's good. We opened up a Pandora's box.
Yes. All right, everyone. Have a good night. Thank you for coming. And I don't want to stop talking, but shit. What you do?
Bro, we've been at this for 2 hours. See, I would like to, but I know the brain. I'm very good at keeping track of stuff.
All right, everyone. Have a good night.
Right. Have a good night, guys.
I will see you guys in 2 weeks. And I guess Greatest Gamer will join us again.
Yep.
All right. Good night, everyone. Bye-bye.